just want to take you very quickly through the information we have. First up is critical testimony that we have exclusively accessed from one of the cabin crew members before the internal inquiry committee. This is a cabin crew member called Neeta Kararia, and this is her handwritten testimony where she speaks about the complainant being shifted to another business class seat called 12C, which she says that the complainant did not ask for a change of seat or an upgrade, but she was moved nevertheless. This, of course, contradicts what the complainant has been saying. Now, let's stay on this slide for a moment. Neeta Kararia's account says the guest seated at 8C. So I want everybody to understand that the guest seated at 8C is the accused Shankar Mishra. The complainant is seated in 9A, so in the row ahead and on the window, right? Um, when she complains, the crew goes back to Mr. Mishra, wakes him up, he's asleep under his duvet, and she says he was sleeping, he was woken up and confronted. What did he say? Let's move to the next slide. This is what Shankar Mishra's first reaction is, according to this cabin crew member. Mishra claimed to have no memory of the incident. Let's just stay on this slide for a moment. This is important because a number of people have been saying if he's innocent, why did he apologize? Why did he offer the compensation? Why didn't he say he didn't do it? Now, according to this cabin crew member, Shankar Mishra's first response was to say, I did not do it. And his lawyer, who was speaking to us recently on our platform, said that, there was too much pressure on him and he thought this is an old lady. Let me just pay. Maybe it'll all end. And he says that's not an admission of guilt. Well, Shankar Mishra is in jail. But according to this cabin crew account, he claimed to have no memory of the incident. He then went on to say to the cabin crew member, let's go to the next slide. He said, the lady is like my mother. I cannot even think of doing such a thing. He referenced his 2-year-old daughter. So according to cabin crew Neeta Kararia's account, there was at first a denial. Then, of course, the conversation happens between the two of them. The complainant has said she was forced to talk to him. That's not mentioned in the cabin crew report. Finally, if we can then move on, Neeta Kararia says that the lady herself said to Neeta Kararia, Shankar Mishra appears to be quote unquote a decent man, so she does not want to press charges. She subsequently, of course, changes her mind about this, especially after she talks to her daughter and her son-in-law. Now, very quickly, this is the testimony before an internal investigation committee. But we also have the crew report from that day. And we have cabin crew member Ruby Singh's account, which we can now bring up. And Ruby Singh says that the complainant came to the galley and informed us that she was wet. In other words, that she'd been urinated on. Ruby Singh then goes on to say, can we move to the next slide? Ruby Singh then goes on to say, she started taking off her clothes in the galley. We requested her to use the toilet. This is all in writing, documented. We have the documents with us. Then, let's go to the next slide. Basically, she says, I went to the complainant's seat. I thoroughly cleaned it. I sanitized it. Remember, the complainant has said that she was not given any help, not given any cooperation. And finally, this is what Ruby Singh says. By the end of it, there were contradictions between the complainant and Mishra, Shankar Mishra, and she had agreed on a $200 settlement to dry clean her clothes. But later she said Mr. Mishra had not transferred the money, but Mr. Mishra was able to show us proof on the ground that that money had been transferred. Now, let's come to, I almost feel like Miss Marple from some Agatha Christie, because let's come to actually the person who might be the only one who knows exactly what happened. The passenger sitting next to the complainant. She has now been identified. She is a lady called Ila Banerjee. She gives a very short statement that has been included in the crew report that we have seen. And in that report, she basically only says, she doesn't mention anything. She doesn't say she saw something. She doesn't say there was any sort of urine that fell on her. She simply says the crew came. Let's move to the next slide. She simply says the crew came, they cleaned up the seat, they gave a new blanket, and that's all she says. And of course, the lawyers of Mr. Mishra have pounced on this and said, look, if actually Shankar Mishra had done this, how can the passenger next to the complainant not be complaining? Lastly, but not last but not the least, the role of Dr. Sugata Bhattacharjee, who's been a very, very vocal witness. He's a US-based doctor. He's spoken to us as well. The commander of the plane now says that when Sugata Bhattacharjee boards, he inquires about a first-class upgrade. He's told that Air India has a no-upgrade policy. This is well before anything has happened. He then goes back to his business class seat. He ends up being the person sitting next to Shankar Mishra. Then the commander's report goes on to say, let's move to the next slide, that after the incident happened, he got very upset and he got very agitated. And then, of course, he writes his own written complaint. And finally, let's bring up the last slide. The commander basically says that Dr. Bhattacharjee, who says Shankar Mishra had had 4 whiskeys and was drunk, had also had a couple of drinks, and the possibility of him being high cannot be ruled out.